From LateNighter.com, it's Inside Late Night with Mark Malkoff.
Hi, it's Mark Malkoff. Welcome to Inside Late Night. The reason I am doing this intro is because it's October 21st, 2025, and my book, Love Johnny Carson, is out today. I can't believe it. I've been working on this thing for years. I've interviewed over 400 people. Please support me, make me happy. It would make me so happy if you got the book. It's available on everywhere from Amazon to BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, Target, Walmart, so many different places. Audible, you can get the audiobook. I did narrate it over 5 days, so please check that out. Today, my co-writer, David Ritz, talks to me about writing Love Johnny Carson. He is a legend in his own right. Stay tuned. David Ritz, it's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you, Mark. Happy to do this.
I still can't believe two things. One, when this is coming out, it's the day that our book, Love Johnny Carson, comes out. And two, that I was able to somehow get you to agree to work with me. I mean, you're a legend. I mean, the amount of the books that you've put out, number of hits, and the people that you work with, iconic people, and that you've shown so much kindness to me. I'll be forever grateful.
Well, I
to
appreciate
you.
that. I appreciate that, but I think it's all happened because it should have happened. And I think of the book title, Love Johnny Carson. I just have always loved Johnny Carson. So when I got this note from you, because I get a bunch of notes from people wanting to do books, and I don't even read them all because it's usually my aunt was a great airplane pilot. Please write her story, and I can't get a deal and so on and so forth. But when your note came through, it really touched my heart because beyond my feeling how genuine you were and about Johnny, I was really impressed by the amount of scholarship. I mean, you probably wouldn't use the word scholarship, but that's exactly what it was. You had learned everything. You had spent years doing this research, and also you were doing it, and I think this is what drew me in the most. You were doing it from a position of love. In other words, it wasn't, okay, what kind of nasty shit can we learn about Johnny and salacious details? Because everybody has that in their life. I mean, me included. But you were coming at it from such a righteous point of view that it attracted me, and that's all. And I just like to do books where I can express and I can help people tell a story that I think is important to tell. And you had that story. As a matter of fact, you had that story times 100. I mean, our challenge was how to fit everything in because you just know so much.
How do we tell the story? Where do we put everything? And you talked me off the ledge so many times. I mean, I think initially we said we were going to hand it in X number of months, and we needed more time. And the publisher, thank goodness, was like, take your time. And we were able to do it right. But the book never would have happened without you. And I'm eternally grateful. And people,
I appreciate that, but yeah. I don't take a lot of credit. I just think certain literary collaborations happen in exactly the right time. And like I said, your note got to me at exactly the right time. And we also had an agent who could sell the book at exactly the right time. And we didn't really know how much time it would take, but we allowed ourselves to explore the shaping of the story. And, you pulled it off. And the other thing that I want to say that's important for people to understand, that you're a comic, but you're an idiosyncratic. Well, I guess all comics are probably idiosyncratic. Not all, but most. But you have your own comedic style. It's quirky, it's creative, and it's charming. And so, you charm me. I mean,
oh my goodness, right back at you. Getting to hang out in your office. I'm looking at your office right now and just getting to spend time with you. on the phone and just everything that you've done. It's unbelievable. And no, I consider myself a pretty persistent person. When I want something, persevere and try to
Right.
make this happen. Now, we've never talked about this. When you the Ray Charles book that you did, Brother Ray, when you did with Ray Charles, which really put you on the map. It got so much press and it really opened doors. How many how many years did that take? And the way that you went about it to finally make it happen was so unique and so smart to actually get everything in Braille, to send it in
Yeah.
Braille.
Yeah.
How you mean you were tried for how long did that take you to make
Well,
happen?
it took a couple of yees, but I think that's the other reason that you and I get along because we're both kind of crazy men uh, when it comes to pursuing a project. And in the case of Ray, it was like you and Johnny. I mean, I just love Ray ever since I was very young. Always wanted to meet him, and I came to LA. I had written a book before. I had done a bunch of journalism. I got to, I had a master's degree in literature, but those weren't the right qualifications. But I didn't care, and I came to LA, and I met his manager, and his manager wanted nothing to do with me. So I was staying at a hotel not far from his office, and I called Western Union. And I said, "Can you send telegrams in Braille?" And they said, "Yes, for $1 more as a service to the blind." So I figured he'd be the only one in the office who could read Braille, and my pitches went into those telegrams were written in Braille, and I would send one every 3 days, and they were long. They were, I love you. I know your work. You've never told your story before. I think it's time to tell your story. And so he called me and he said, "Who is this crazy man sending me telegrams in Braille? Come on over." So I figured once I got in the room with him, he would feel that I was genuine, and that's what happened. And so it became a really good collaboration. But the other important thing, and this applies to your book as well, I didn't know that my main talent was as a ghostwriter, so I thought I would just write a biography of him. And then my agent and other people convinced me that his autobiography would be more interesting, and was certainly more interesting to me. So I wrote it in his voice. And in college, I never took a course in ghostwriting. I mean, it just don't even mention it. And so in ghosting his book, I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't really know what it meant to channel a voice other than I did it. And when it was done, Ray liked it and people liked it, and I thought, what did I do exactly? And I think what I did was listen carefully to him. And it isn't like at first I thought, okay, you take the transcripts of the interview and that's the voice, but it's not the voice because the transcript is talk. It's not literary. It is an art, and art is based on artifice. I have to give the reader the idea that Ray is talking to them, and I just did that in a natural way. And I think it also applies to you because in writing your book, we determined at the very beginning this was going to be your book. You were going to tell the story, and and together we worked that through. I mean, you were great as an editor, as a co-writer, writing whole passages by yourself. Writing whole chapters by yourself. So this idea of my understanding that my main job is to help people find their voice on the page. And the more open they were, and Ray was very open, you were very open, other people were very open, other people weren't very open, and it's a struggle. But in your case, it was joyful because you were appreciative and also you're humble. And I'm kind of humble in that I still don't know exactly what I'm doing. And it's just like, okay, let's allow this joint energy to work in us and let's be moved by a spirit. I know all this sounds, new agey, but it's ghostwriting is mysterious. And I give you so much credit, Mark, because you were open to the mystery of the process. Now, now, of course, another part of the process was just hard work revision. and you were also super great at that. You got into the trenches big time.
We both did. It was you talked me through it, and we both did it together. I was going to ask you, what surprised you about Johnny Carson? Watching him is one thing as a fan, but then really we were digging in. You were watching a lot
Hmm.
of old clips, and we were
Yeah.
just going through his life from New York, some of his personal life. But did anything surprise you?
Well, I was surprised at the end of this project. I was surprised that I loved him more than when I began.
Hmm.
I learned that his charm was genuine, and his and again, this is why the book was so helpful to me. And his genius was, beyond impeccable comic timing, and his whole knowledge of history of humor, and his relationship to the Jack Ennies of the world and the Bob Hope. Beyond all that, uh, the thing I learned the most and surprised me the most is how deep his loving spirit was. And that's why I love the fact that love is in the title, because, again, this is going to sound goopy, but I think watching clip after clip after clip, you see that the overwhelming number of guests whom he interviews really love him. They don't like him, they love him. And that, goes from Frank Sinatra to Buddy Hackett to Buddy Rich to, it goes on and on and on in all genres. And so that, again, galvanized my spirit and made me feel like whatever his flaws were, and of course, we put them in the
We
book,
did.
it isn't sugarcoated at all. But what's overwhelmingly obvious is that the reason Johnny was loved as an icon in American culture, the reason he was loved is because he projected love, and you loved watching him, and comics love being interviewed by him, and actresses and actors, and he had a lightness to him, and that's the other thing that I learned. Again, he had a light touch. He was easy, and that light touch coming at the end of the day, where you can try to put your troubles away and escape, was very, very deep, and very, very rare. And he was without pretensions. He was self-effacing. He just had so many great qualities that were manifest on the show, and so the process of doing this book with you uh, was joyful because Johnny was joyful, and watching these clips. I mean, I'm still going back and watching Don Rickles clips, and I can't stop. I mean, it's a major problem for me because I've got other books I got to write. And stop it, David. Stop looking at Johnny Carson.
How many books have you done now? Is it 65 or 60?
It's a bunch. It's up there. But like I said, I really treasure this one, and look back at our experience with a whole lot of gratitude, because it made me happy. It made me happy in the way that I think Johnny made people happy. And you know this a lot better than I, but all the Johnny books and all the complaints about him, and the Joan Rivers stuff, and the Wayne Newton stuff.
It's a handful of people. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. It's a
a
handful of
hand
people.
a handful of people that want to bring out his salacious qualities, or his alcoholism, or whatever. It doesn't make any difference, because we know, after watching him for 2 decades, we know he made us happy,
Yeah.
and you can't take that away. And like I said, the glory of the fact that they're all, not all of them, but a monster amount of clips are available on YouTube, is further proof that he continues to be loved.
Yeah, the Johnny Carson, the official one that Jeff Sotzing runs, has over 1 million subscribers. It's like 1.1, and it's There's absolutely over 1 billion views I think on that the official channel, I think it's 3/4 of or, 750 million some, but, there's so many other million, views that are all over the place. Yeah, just saying how much they love him. The realization that I got that I don't feel like the other books really may have really emphasized was, and I think that you touched upon this, is that when I did talk to Johnny's friends, the people that really knew him, that spent time with him, and his second wife said the same thing, is that when he felt comfortable with the person, and there was only a small group, that he was almost the same Johnny you would see on the show. There was
Right.
very little difference, maybe a little less gregarious, as one of them said, but there is no way. Somebody said that you could do that for 30 years and not be yourself out there. But
Yeah.
but he would, when the camera was off, there was, for self-preservation purposes, and we go in the book with how many people were threats against his life, and how betrayed he was with certain people he knew, and he just really had to protect himself. That he kind of would be, kind of, people would observe as what cold and aloof would be, was just self-preservation, more or less. But just the whole realization that that was him, when he hosted the show, that was really him, was something that I found. When I found that out, I just it was that was a big deal, I think.
Yeah, and also I think the other thing that I learned, and maybe because you know I, I, I'm 82, so that my watching Johnny, I've got more years away from that, and so this was like a renewal. This was like a relearning process for me. But the other major thing that came out, which warmed my heart and warmed me to your project even more, was his generosity. And I don't mean of philanthropic, though all of that is there too, but on camera generosity with comics. Because when you look at the range of comics he entertained, from Carlin to Richard Pryor to Buddy Hackett, on and on and on, and Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers, he was just a great appreciator of comics, had no feeling of competition with them. And comics, I had dealings with Milton Berle. I did a couple of books with Stun Rickles. I did a book with Andrew Dice Clay. I mean, I've dealt a lot with comics, and comics are a tough breed. They're ruthlessly competitive, uh, 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 and yet Johnny, again, we go back to love, but Johnny's love of comedy and his appreciation of the variety of comedy is so apparent in these interviews. He's such a generous interviewer, and he's a great straight man. And his flexibility, his kind of nuanced maneuverability, to kind of adjust his attitude to the comic that's next to him, I found extremely moving. And also, and this is going to maybe sound too deep for this thing, but also kind of helps me in my own life. I mean, in other words, part of our job in life is to listen to other people with our heart, and listen appreciatively, and listen generously, and not have to kind of butt in and allow them to be who they are. So again, I mean, we did not obviously write a religious religious book, but I think when you get through reading your book, Mark, what you do get this feeling like, oh, here's a man who had a lot to teach us from a spiritual point of view. Love other people, listen to other people, allow other people to be who they are.
Yeah, we talk about in the book. Peter LaSalle told me, and it's in the book, about the one thing that Johnny's rule for the interviews were to make the guests look good, and it wasn't for him to get a laugh. That was not the
Yeah,
first thing. Was always about making the guests look good. The first 20 minutes or half hour, the monologue was all Johnny. The comedy bit was Johnny, and then it was all about the guests looking good. And if he could get a laugh, that would be great. And inevitably, a laugh would come. But it was all about making the guests look good. And some of the hosts obviously do not do that and are always trying to one up or trying to think about how they're going to be funny in response. And there was just something about what Carson did that was, that made him special, I think.
I agree, and also I compare him. I don't really compare him so much to other comics. So obviously, he was influenced by Jack Benny, and he had certain riffs and certain facial um, um, techniques and certain gesticulations that he borrowed from other comics and other comics do all that. But I think when I think about what Johnny's place is in the culture, I compare him to people like Louis Armstrong and Willie Nelson and people who have somehow touched the hearts of a whole lot of different kinds of people. And I think why we'll always be listening to, Louis Armstrong or Willie Nelson, and we'll always be going back and watching Johnny is because they just make us feel good.
Yeah.
And they are able to express humanity with a lightness, and there's a pun on that because I think they are light in their presentations. I mean, this is probably a crazy analogy, Willie and Louie and Johnny, but beyond being light in their presentation, they also carry light. In other words, they bring us they take us out of the kind of darkness of our day and brings us into light. And I think that's why we're drawn to them. End of my metaphysical bullshit.
I have to ask about what was it like working with Don Rickles and going to his home and spending so much time with him, obviously one of Carson's most beloved guests.
Well, I mean, Don was great, and it was a kick in the head for me. Happened, rather late in my career. 82 now. I probably met Don when I was 69 or 65, and he was older than me. And he was much different. I mean, he was salty and sometimes cranky. He had some health problems when I was working on the book, but again, he understood what I was up to. He knew I wanted to channel his voice. It's hard channeling a comic's voice because we already hear that voice in our heads. So to create a literary voice for him took a while, but ultimately he did it. I mean, he wasn't a reader. He mainly watched the Dodgers on TV and ate pastrami on rye, but it was fun. And we went to Vegas to see him. I mean, he was very gracious. And when the book was over, it was a hit. And he and Barbara took my wife and I out to eat. And, so he was appreciative. And it was interesting. In his early career, of course, I was intrigued by his early career and how he got over, and, he idolized Milton Berle, and I grew up on Milton Berle. So we had a whole lot in common. I remember he talked about opening for Charlie Barnett's band, which is the famous big band in the big band era. And then he apologized to me and he said, "I know you love music and I wish I could tell you more music stories, but I don't have them." So, I mean, he was, he knew who I was and he treated me well. And so, it happened again at the time that it should have happened. He was older, he was in his 80s when we did the book.
Yeah, it was fun. I just read an interview with Paul Schaefer. I think it was Time Magazine, and he was saying he was at a Bon Jovi rehearsal, and that's when he first met you. And you said, if you ever want to write a book, let me know. And he knew who you were. How often? And then you wrote the book with him. But first of all, what was it like working with Paul? And how often would that happen that you would meet somebody and think, you know what, they have a book in them, and if you ever want to write something, let me know. I guess that would happen every so often with you.
And it's still trying to happen. I mean, I'm still chasing after people that I want. I mean, I am an unapologetic hustler, And I think then again, that's the reason I responded so well to you, because you have hustle energy,
I try.
and well, no, but you have it, and I felt in your note to me that energy. Uh, it's happened a lot. I mean, where I meet people and say, I'd love to do your book, and it takes years, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all, and sometimes it does. In Paul's case, it was another joyful experience, because Paul and I are, I love Paul, and it's all music, and Paul has a great sense of humor, great comedic timing. Uh, Letterman, who is Johnny the Air, I got to hear great Letterman stories, and at the time, Paul was living in. He had a house outside New York. He had an apartment in New York. He had an apartment in Miami. So I got to go to all those places and enjoy that. And Paul is pretty much the way he is on camera. I mean, he's got his own charm, and it allowed me to look into a world that had always intrigued me, which is the world of David Letterman, but also the world of SNL, and he's close to Marty Short, and he's got a great culture, he's got a great network, and Canada and remote Canada, and I love the whole thing, and it's going back to you and your book. I'm motivated by curiosity. And I think what kept me going with your book, which turned out to be much longer than I usually write,
Yes, we both. It was much longer than we thought. Yes,
and it could have been twice as long, because
Yeah.
you just know so much. But I think what kept me going, and this is different than you, because you knew all the stuff that's in the book before it was written, but I didn't. So I was motivated by curiosity, like, what is the real Joan Rivers, Johnny Carson story that's never been told in the kind of detail that you tell it?
Yeah.
What is the real Wayne Newton, Johnny Carson story? So a lot of what kept me enthusiastic and kept my energy up was curiosity. And I think that the reader of, I hope that all the people who will read this book will also be driven by curiosity, because the other thing about Johnny is he's endlessly fascinating.
Oh yeah, that's why I started the podcast. I had all these questions about him, how he did the show, who was hanging
Right.
out backstage, who was holding the curtain open, and then suddenly I'm hanging out with Irving Davis in his home in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
hearing the stories. You were mentioned on Carson's Tonight Show when Jay Leno was guest hosting when Smokey Robinson was on, because you did his book, but he mentioned you, which was really nice.
And I think I was mentioned, here comes my ego, so watch out. I think I was also mentioned when Paul was interviewed by Letterman and the book came out. I think that's the
Oh
only.
yes, yes.
But again, I'm okay with not being mentioned. And the other reason I was eager to do your book is because I knew this moment would come when the book would be published, and you would get to go out there and sell it, and nobody could sell this book better than you can, because you remain enthusiastic and you remain enamored of Johnny, having learned everything there is to learn. You probably love him more than you've ever loved him before. And I think I'm so eager, and don't forget to give me all the links to all the shows you're going on. I'm so eager to watch you speak about all that.
I'm trying. You've been so amazing to talk me through everything, and I'm gonna do my best to, do the book justice. I wanted to mention that I was watching today on YouTube. There's a YouTube clip of Marvin Gaye was on Carson, and I think it was September of '67, and he's doing a duet. I wish I knew the woman's name. They sing "Ain't No Mountain High Enough,"
Tammy
and
Terrell?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. You did Marvin Gaye's book. How long did it take you to convince Marvin Gaye to do the book with you?
Well, that was another kind of hustle on my part. I'd done Ray Charles' book. I love Marv. The two other artists, my kind of holy trinity was Ray Charles, Marvin Gaye, and Aretha Franklin. And early in my career, I thought, okay, I'm going to get all of them, and I did. Though it, Marvin took a long time. I wrote him a letter. I put in an album I loved that was negatively criticized in the press. I thought the album was misunderstood. I thought it was a great album. It's called "Here, My Dear," and I think once he saw in the press that I was writing articles in his favor, I got in, but I loved him, but he went through hell and had a tragic ending, and because of that, the book could not be an as told to ghost written book because he wasn't there to approve it. So I had to turn it into a biography, and called Divided Soul. And that whole experience, the whole Marvin Gaye experience, took 5 years.
Were you in Belgium? How long were you with him in Belgium? Was that
2 weeks, 3 weeks,
okay?
and that's where we wrote Sexual Healing together, and that's another long story. But I look at all these things like I look at you and the book we did together. You can't predict anything. I mean, I put out my intentions. Like my intention was to write Ray. My intention was to write Marvin or Aretha Franklin or BB King or Val Kilmer, or all the different books I've done. I've had intentions, but you can't make it happen without the universe organizing itself in a way that it does happen. Again, I know that sounds kind of spacey, but I really believe it. I mean, you came into my life at a time when I was doing a lot of other things, and yet, I could feel your spirit and I could feel your energy. And I had a feeling if I responded to it, something would happen. We would sort of manifest our energy, our intentions. And that's why it's so beautiful that you have this book in your hand and I have the book in my hand, and it's there.
I still can't believe just with everything that you've accomplished with so many books, and then you have a Grammy, and then you bring up Sexual Healing, which you have, you co-wrote with Marvin Gaye, and at one point he just thanked you in the notes, liner notes, and said that you had something to do with it, and then you, unfortunately, he was going through some things, and you had
Yeah,
to sue to get your name on there, but you had the recordings
right,
of you making the song together. So I
right.
mean, the
And
courts, his own lawyer, said that you wrote it with him. So
yeah, well, and also he said on the back of the album when he said, "With thanks to David Ritz's brilliant um, uh, literary mind for the title, Sexual Healing." So you can't copyright a title, but then I, I had it on tape of us writing the lyrics, and anyway, his was a tragic life.
yeah.
My experience with him was, to me, invaluable, and I cherish it, and I cherish him, and I feel really blessed that I met him when I did.
I was going to ask, do I have this right that Aretha Franklin took you 18 years to convince her to do a book with you?
Yeah, because I met her early on with Ray, and she didn't want to do a book, and then one day I wrote her a note and said, "I'm coming to Detroit." And I had written her hundreds of notes. It's like you and your crazy relationship to the world of Johnny Carson. And then I got a phone call and she said, "Oh, if you're in Detroit, call me." And I called her and she liked me and we wrote a book. And I didn't think the book was very good because I don't think she really um, came to terms with the real facts of her life. So I waited another 15 years and I wrote a biography of her because I knew so much about her and knew all her. I knew her family. I knew her producers. I knew the world. So that's another. So it's interesting. Of the three people who I wanted to write about, I got to write about all of them. Ray was the first. It was relatively easy. Marvin was damn near impossible, but it happened, and thank you, Jesus. And Aretha, I wrote two books, and so it's messy, but it's a tribute to spirit, because like I said, have learned over the years to be led by spirit, and to appreciate the mystery of life and the mystery of how we meet people. And when we do meet people, what happens? And I think that applies to our book, that we met at the perfect time. You had an open heart about what the book should be and how you need it to work. You were humble enough to say you need help. And
I just could not imagine doing this. The process, was so overwhelming.
mhm.
And then to have somebody like you there as my Yoda, and then to talk me through everything. Yeah, it was
But
the
you also have to understand, I mean, my heart was open and I felt humble
yes.
because I just knew what the average person knew about John. I mean, I was not a scholar like you. I was not, I had a superficial understanding of it all. And I was grateful to you that you were willing to sign up with a person who had so much to learn. So I think it was a matter of us teaching each other and
Mhm.
both of us not having to feel like one of us is in control. And you were sort of the perfect collaborator because um, to me these relationships have to be lateral, have to be as that has have to be horizontal, because I can't feel like I'm the boss. It's great that you didn't feel like you were the boss. We never had a single argument, which is
No.
amazing. Amazing,
Yeah,
because we talked for hundreds of hours,
yeah.
and I think we each of us listened to each other deeply, and I think because we respected each other, we knew that whatever we were talking about, should the answer should be, is it going to help the book or hurt the book, as opposed to, hey, this is me, I've written all these books. You got to listen to me, or you're telling me, "Hey, this is me. I know everything there is to know about Johnny Carson. You don't know Johnny." So it's I think we're kindred spirits, and because of that, there was harmony, and I'm really really grateful for that.
I am too, and I feel like we really did tell the truth. I mean, Johnny
Yeah,
on his Tonight Show would talk about his drinking, his struggles. He
yeah,
said he would have just that one, that extra drink, and it would turn him into Attila the Hun. And we go into some of that. He talked about being overly competitive, which was something he really struggled with, and that's a theme I think throughout the book. So, um, definitely, there's we go into things that he struggled with. Another person that went on with Carson that Johnny really enjoyed that you got to work with multiple times was Willie Nelson. What was your experience like with Willie?
well, it still is. I'm doing another book with Billy,
Oh
which will be,
wow! Is
yeah,
that
which
your
will be,
third with him?
no, I think it's the
Okay.
fifth or sixth. I
Oh
think
my
it's the sixth.
goodness.
It's great. He's a beautiful man. He's a beautiful spirit. At 92, he's still working. Did 100 dates. Still writing songs. I mean, like I said, I'm 82. He's 92, so he's like a role model for me.
Hmm.
That you can work through your 80s and still be creative and keep it together. And so it's I'm privileged, and I've been very blessed uh, that people will entertain my own style. And Mark, you know my style at this point, and my style is very assertive, and I work with a lot of energy, and sometimes it's too much for people. And you know, I want to get it done, and that kind of energy. And so Willie's very responsive to all that, and he's got a unique voice, which I love, and he's behind the beat, and so so these books are I feel like I'm making music when I write these books with Willie, and at the same time he's relaxed, so he's not a demanding collaborator at all, so it enables me to relax a bit. And also, let me go back to your book, because this
Yeah.
is something that's occurring to me right now. Every book I've written with the person alive and in person. In other words, Ray and Marvin and Aretha and BB King and the Neville Brothers and on and on. Um, uh, uh, they're all people who I knew, and I've never written a book until now about a person who I never knew. So again, I broke my rule. My rule has always been don't do a book if you don't know the person personally, because that's my strong point. It's to channel a voice and I have to hear the voice. The reason I made an exception in this case, and even though you never met Johnny, and he was gone, long before you began this process, I was convinced that your tenacity and your spiritual relationship to Johnny was so great that together we could make him come alive in this book, which I think we did. Now you did it more than me.
Oh, I no, we did, and it is one of those things. We talked on the phone a bunch of times, and you asked me questions, I asked you questions, and then we at one point we're like, let's see what happens, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we
But
did.
but but again, that's why I went against myself. In other words, had I not been convinced that your love of Johnny would enable you to write a book that honored him and conveyed his humor and his charm and all this stuff, I would have never got into it,
Oh,
ever, ever, ever. But your and then listening to your podcast and just the overview of your research. And what I loved about your research was it was crazily inclusive. I mean, there wasn't anybody you wouldn't interview who knew something about Johnny, and it was exhaustive. And I so we always had a gold mine. It was a question of how we turned the gold mine into a book, and how we melt down the gold or whatever the metaphor. I'm running out of metaphorical stuff to say, but we we were always dealing with an abundance of riches,
sure.
and that was because of your work. And I had such great respect for that. I thought, okay, this is going to be hard because it's a long book going over a long career, but I'm working with a person who is the opposite of lazy. I mean, energetic and conscientious. And that person has the ability to sustain his enthusiasm because I won't mention them, but a lot of collaborations I've had, Mark, with people, they just go away after we get the deal, and I can't get them on the phone, and
Hmm.
it's rough because they don't prioritize. And this has been a number one priority for you for years. How many years?
4 years, I
Well,
think, something like that. Yeah,
no, no,
it's.
no, no. I don't mean just this book. I
Oh,
mean,
oh gosh, 13. I think I started
yeah,
the podcast in February of 2014. Started the interviews the year prior, 2013. So
yeah. So
it's
that's
12 years.
yeah. So you have a dozen years
Yeah, it's
where
unbelievable to think
where
about.
where you've been driven and again I think that's the other thing. Maybe that's another topic of this book. Maybe that's one of the subtexts is drive. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we're able to do it because I'm driven still in old age. You're driven in young age, and Johnny was driven.
That's
uh,
true. Yeah,
Johnny was driven, and I think part of what we try to do, and I think it is one of the through lines of the book, is to understand and document Johnny's drive. Like you said, he was competitive, as most entertainers have to be, but his drive to excel and his drive to hone his craft and his appreciation of the
yeah.
craft
We
was
we
great,
have we have him at one point in his apartment at the UN Plaza. I
right?
believe it was 1971, and he has 4 television sets all
Hmm.
set up, and he's watching his show at 11:30, and then you have Dick Cavett,
Hmm.
David Frost, and I think it was Merv Griffin or Cavett. I mean, it was all his competition. So, I mean, the man, his competitive streak, we really do show. I do wanna mention, your idea it was your idea for the title Love Johnny Carson, and to me personally, it meant there were just so many people I talked to that I spoke with for the podcast, and while I was doing this book, they would just say, "I love Johnny Carson," "Oh, I loved Johnny Carson." So when you had that came up with the title, it was a really good fit and people really liked it. So I'm glad you did that. And then another thing that went against my instinct just because it's not my favorite thing that I think hopefully people I'm told by a few people that have read the book already that they really liked it was you having me do an introduction about myself in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with it initially just because I'm like it's about Johnny, it's not about me. But I think you were right. I think it does help maybe just to show the readers my journey and who is this guy and why does he care about the subject matter. For the people that didn't listen to the podcast, or even if they did, just the backstory. So I do appreciate you doing that. And yeah,
And that was important to me for you to establish yourself as the storyteller
yeah,
because you are the Johnny storyteller. And again, like Johnny, you're a generous storyteller in that I don't know, it would be interesting for us to put it through AI and maybe AI could give us the answer. But a, a lot of this book, and I'm going to ask you how much of it
yeah.
is your channeling the voice of others talking about Johnny. So there's a lot of first person narration on your part, but but whenever we can, we allow the witness to use his or her own voice. And I think that's the other thing. Here we are, kind of praising our own book, but who cares? But
Praise
but
away,
that's
David. Everybody, please get Love Johnny Carson now available on all platforms.
right. But I think the other thing that makes the book so interesting is that there's so many people talking about Johnny. It isn't like one thing I wanted to avoid, and we didn't even argue about this because it came to you naturally because that's what you've been doing for 12 years. But one thing I wanted to avoid was an egotistical narrator telling the reader, I know everything about Johnny. I understand who he was. Listen to me. And there's none of that. There's a humility to it, which I hope reflects Johnny's humility because he knew in his mind he was not as great as comic as Richard Pryor. He was not as great a comic as George Carlin, I mean, he was a different kind of comic. He was great in his own way, but he had humility. He was not afraid to present geniuses like Jonathan Winters and so I think it was your humility that began this whole process 12 years ago when you started talking about Johnny is I'm here to learn. And so as the reader reads this book, what I hope they're going to feel is you learning about Johnny, beginning from a position of love, because there's no way to hide the fact that you love him and you're motivated by love. But you're also get out of the way so many times, and there's no pontification on your part. There's no know-it-allness on your part. So to me, one of the reasons I love you so much is because you are humble, even when you know so much. And that's a very rare thing. Most people who know as much as you know about any one topic are impossible to talk to because all they want to do is tell you their point of view and show you how much they know. And you aren't a show off, and you're a what I can learn kind of guy. And and I enjoy that so much about you. And that again is what made the process so pleasurable. Um, and I have a feeling when people read the book, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel they're in the hands of a person who is crazy for Johnny, but knows there's a world of information out there to learn. And let's go learn this together. And we're going to have a good time along the way because Johnny had a good time.
Yeah, for 30 years. Yeah, somebody I talked to that was friends with him for decades said that Johnny confessed near the last couple of years of his life that the happiest times were on the show when he
Yeah.
was himself doing the initial hour and 45 minutes, if people can believe he had an hour and 45 minutes, and then it went to 90 minutes and then 60 minutes. But that was still just so much fun and adrenaline. And yeah, he loved it.
And also, let me say, in again, us hawking the book, uh, which I'm happy to do because I am so proud of having worked
Yeah.
with you on the book. But the other thing that I think is great about the book, it's coming out at a time when the whole platform is going away. I mean, the seismic changes in American television and American culture, where in 2 years there probably won't be any talk shows as we know them now, because they're proving financially,
The model.
the model's gone. And so what we've done, I mean, what I I say we, but you always more than me, is recreate a time and a place when this particular form of entertainment was at its very height. And it was engineered by a man who had comedic genius, but comedic genius of a very particular kind. And that almost went against the tradition of comedy, which you have one guy taking up all the energy. You have, uh, you have, Bill Cosby or George Carlin or or Lenny Bruce, or just commanding everything. And Johnny's comedic genius, of course, was collaborative. He was a collaborator as an entertainer, and so I love the fact that the book is now coming out at a moment when this genre is disappearing, and you've been able to capture this genre at its height, and it's still entertaining.
I can't believe that he's been off the show now for 33 years. It does not feel that way. I remember where I was when I watched the final show in May of 92, but the clips on YouTube and clips beyond that aren't for public, that aren't available to the public, just to watch the collection. So much of that stuff still holds up. And, the day this is being released, it's the day of our book launch, is October 21st. Of 2025. And in 2 days, on October 23rd, two things. One, that is Johnny's 100th birthday, which is amazing. October 23rd, he turns 100. And then also that night, I will be in New York City signing books at Book Culture on 112th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam at 7 o'clock. So
Oh,
if you
good.
want to come out, and then I will be going to other places I'll be announcing soon around the country. So stay tuned for that. But David, I can't thank you enough for your friendship, and this has been just wonderful to hear some of these stories I didn't know in detail. So just to hear them from you, with people you've worked with, and I'm just so grateful to you for your friendship and that we got to do this.
Well, and I'm grateful to you, and I'm excited. This is a beautiful moment, when, after years of hard work and,
Yeah.
revisions, you have a book in your hand. And I look forward to hearing you on all these interviews, and will always feel gratitude in my heart that you reached out to me.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. On Apple Podcasts, please rate it and leave a review. Be sure to go to LateNighter.com for all your late night TV news. And you can find my podcast at LateNighter.com/podcasts. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Tuesday.